India's youth are doing what their parents wouldn't, solving personal and mental struggles openly online. So, this article by Rishabh Thakur gives us an insight into all of this. 34% of teens say that they at least sometimes get mental health information from social media. Among those, 63% say it's an important way that they get info. In a global survey by McKinsey Health Institute, Gen Z respondents were more likely than older generations to say their mental health was poor or very poor, 16% versus 7% for baby boomers. So, a lot of people, as you say, they're going online for help. You have a lot of apps now that give counseling therapy, uh, free as well as paid for more detailed help. So, this is how it is today. For many today, mental health isn't just private, it's public, performative, and yes, profitable. Social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube are now flooded with short, relatable clips, anxiety confessions, coping hacks, morning mindfulness routines, and real talk about therapy. So, what was once private has become content, shareable, relatable, and endlessly scrollable. But this is just about likes. By being open about their struggles, the youth is building communities where vulnerability is celebrated, stigma is challenged, and connection is currency. Mental health conversations now double as a social glue, turning followers into friends and clicks into conversations. The monetization angle is real. Self care brands, wellness apps, mental health merch, and online courses are tapping into this wave, showing that emotional honesty can fuel both influence and income. Authenticity, it seems, sells. Every morning on her way to college, 25-year-old Sakshi scrolls through reels as the Delhi metro rattles on, sandwiched between dance videos and fashion hauls, are clips that feel oddly personal. A stranger explaining what a panic attack looks like, a girl crying into a hoodie with a caption, "Healing isn't linear," a journaling tutorial set to sad indie music. Sakshi saves them, sometimes shares them, and on her worst days, replays them. They don't solve her problems, but they remind her she's not the only one living with an invisible heaviness. Mental health, once something that existed only as a rumor in Indian families, has become an algorithmic companion on the commute. So, healing today, as Shefali Anurag, co founder of Koto, says, healing today extends beyond clinics, journals, mood boards, skincare routines, vision boards. All these have become symbols of self care, while tarot, astrology, energy rituals are increasingly popular getaways into wellness. So, this shift is unmistakable. So, mental health, which existed once only as a rumor in Indian families, it's become an algorithmic companion on the commute. So, that shift is unmistakable. Across India, therapy is no longer hidden in whispers, it has become a main character in the daily lives of youngsters. From confession pages on Instagram to therapy memes in college WhatsApp groups, from pastel toned journaling aesthetics to podcasts on boundaries and trauma, the vocabulary, the visuals of healing now dominate youth culture. So, what began as private coping has morphed into public content, community building, and in some cases, commerce. According to reports, India's mental health and therapy market was valued at USD 20.17 billion in 2024. It is projected to reach USD 27.35 billion by 2033. So, this mental health conversation is stepping into a dazzling digital future. Teletherapy, AI powered wellness apps, and always on peer communities are rewriting how young people find support. No waiting rooms, no whispered confessions, just instant access to help that feels personal, portable and profoundly modern. Equally transformative is the energy of today's youth who aren't just consuming mental health content, they are curating it, remixing it, and broadcasting it. So their feeds are threaded with coping tips, solidarity posts, and safe spaces which are built for voices long kept to the margins. It's a cultural shift with the potential to ripple outward into policy, institutional reform, and ultimately nationwide access to care. Still, the story of mental health in India lives in a delicate tension between promise and absence. In the metros, therapy apps, digital confession diaries, polished self care rituals have all turned private pain into communal language. So, beyond these bubbles, cost, stigma, deep silences continue to shape who gets help and who remains unseen. And yet, something unmistakable is stirring. Hashtags, late night confession pages, anonymous Discord channels have become rehearsal rooms for a more emotionally literate India. As one clinician notes, social media is valuable, but it can also create competition. So, this duality is part of the atmosphere. So, silent shift that is taking place now. For much of independent India's story, mental health lives in the shadows. In middle class living rooms, depression was dismissed as laziness, anxiety as mere overthinking, emotional collapse as a failure of grit. So the go-to prescriptions: take a walk, pray harder, or the evergreen don't tell anyone. So, therapy simply didn't exist in the vocabulary of everyday life. In Bollywood's glossy universe of the 80s and 90s, heartbreak dissolved into whiskey glasses, not counseling rooms. So, even the most privileged schools and colleges offered no counseling support. Problems were meant for stoic family elders, trusted friends, or the silent endurance of suppression. A report by Korea University's Sapien Labs Center for the Human Brain and Mind revealed that across income groups, a staggering 51% of Indian youth 18 to 24 were struggling or distressed. But a new generation grew up online, raised on Tumblr confessions, YouTube vulnerability, and Instagram pages that turned therapy into a lifestyle, a lexicon, and in some ways an aspiration. So these young Indians are the first to casually say, "My therapist says," over iced coffees. Their bios glow with words like healing, empath, boundaries. So, what changed exactly? For a lot of us, talking about mental health online started as survival but grew into something transformative, says writer, artist, and cancer survivor Tanisha Mahanta. Living through anxiety, depression, and chronic illness, I found the internet to be a lifeline, and I am sure a lot of people feel that way. It is a space of awareness, empathy, and resources that our parents never had, or we were asked to just ignore it. Social media has made therapy less taboo, built communities that have sparked initiatives that genuinely help people heal. She believes the real change, however, will come when empathy outweighs judgment, when the awareness that is built online translates into access, support, and dignity offline too. The real rupture arrived in 2020. The pandemic pushed young Indians indoors, severing them from campuses, friendships, routines, everything that made their world real. Suddenly, life existed entirely through screens. Self help books became survival manuals, mental health TED Talks became a kind of digital sanctuary, therapy apps turned into confidence days. Among the youth, Instagram confession pages exploded, their inboxes brimming with anonymous grief, loneliness, heartbreak, panic, even suicidal thoughts. For many, this was the first time mental health was named in public, even behind the safety of anonymity. So, if we take the case of Rajat, a student in Dehradun, who remembers those months as a haze of Zoom, fatigue, insomnia, and panic spirals. Online, he stumbled on creators who translated therapy into digestible, compassionate reels. So, I realized what I was feeling wasn't random. Once I opened up, many of my friends followed my lead. A web based study of 324 college students found 68.8% reporting high COVID 19 fear, 51.5% experiencing mild to severe anxiety, 28.7% battling moderate to severe depression, numbers that mirrored the everyday reality of a generation defined by isolation and academic free fall. So, mental health professionals and startups felt the tremors. The pandemic was a tipping point. Demand for mental health services surged. Crucially, the conversation became mainstream, says Krishna Veer Singh, co founder and CEO of Listen. While initial spikes reflected acute distress, the ongoing openness, the awareness that has led to sustained demand, especially among young people and young families. So, the shift towards digital first hybrid care models is here to stay. So, you could see today's young generation, as Dr. Mona Gujral, chief psychologist, Koto says, today's generation is cultivating a deeply aestheticized form of vulnerability, what's being called the sad girl era or quiet depression. So, but when depression becomes a fashion statement, there's a real danger of trivializing true suffering, and the need for accessible stigma free support that continues to grow is also there. So, the shift towards digital first hybrid care models is here to stay, and the need for accessible stigma free support continues to grow. From silence to self knowledge, from shame to shared language, the country's emotional landscape is being rewired in real time. And for the first time in decades, healing is no longer a hush hush affair, it's a cultural movement. Moving on to curated catharsis, global internet tropes, sad girl summer, soft life, all that has drifted seamlessly into Indian timelines. So on Instagram and Pinterest, therapy comes dressed in sage green journals, beige candles, and soft focus pastels, turning an inner battle into a lifestyle palette. So nighttime reels, night routine reels glow with lavender oil, reset day edits glimmer with lavender oil, reset day edits glimmer with iced coffee, Sunday self-care unfurls in clay mass and candlelight. Even breakdowns are framed for the feed. So, a teary selfie captioned with a Phoebe Bridgers lyric, a blackout poem on grief filtered to perfection. The chaos of mental illness is buffed, clean, ready for the grid. Counseling psychologist Pranati Kapoor, deeply immersed in the anxieties shaping young adults today, sees the double shimmer. Healing has almost become an aesthetic decorated journals. Perfectly staged self care rituals or the whole sad girl era trend. Sometimes it feels like pain is being packaged as content, and I wonder if that reduces. Will be continuing. So here we are continuing this. All of this turns into something deeply personal, into something consumable. So it's powerful to see people open up. But as it is said here, it's also worrying about this thin line between authentic sharing and commodifying struggles. Now more than ever, as this psychologist says, that there are young clients who come up for a diagnosis of ADHD, anxiety, or even depression, because it's very cool to have a diagnosis. But she also flags the divide. A lot of this conversation is happening among urban, English speaking, internet savvy young people who can afford therapy or self care products. But what about those who don't have the money, the language, or even the awareness? There's a risk that this new openness could end up being limited to a certain section of society, leaving others feeling even more unseen. This aestheticization of emotional pain carries two truths at once. It makes vulnerability visible, beautiful, even after decades of silence, and yet it risks turning sadness into a mood board, distracting from the fact that depression is not a vibe, it is a medical condition. So, one of the most distinctly Indian developments in this emotional renaissance has been the explosion of confession pages. So, from DU hostels to IIT campuses to small town colleges, anonymous Instagram handles have become digital confessionals where students submit everything from fleeting crushes to chilling cries for help. A typical scroll ricochets between giddy, my crush doesn't know I exist, and also gutting comments like, I don't want to live anymore. So, outside these confession corners, a quieter ecosystem thrives. Alumni associations, class WhatsApp chats, closed Facebook groups. So, these informal, interlinked communities have become parallel support systems in a country where institutional mental health infrastructure once feels like a luxury. So, Saurav, General Secretary of an alumni group from PM Shri Kendra Vidyalaya, number 2, Ishapur, Kolkata, describes how their 500 plus WhatsApp members and 200 on Facebook have evolved into something unexpectedly intimate. It started as a way to stay connected with old classmates, but over time, people began sharing about their professional achievements, new hobbies, business promotions, philanthropic activities, and others jumped in with encouragement or advice related to careers. It feels less like a formal support group and more like friends carrying each other through, he says. So, in a culture where admitting emotional strain can still invite judgment, parents calling it attention seeking, peers whispering behind backs, these digital corners act as realms of safety. Anonymous or familiar, curated or candid, they offer the one thing many still struggle to find offline, which is a space to speak and be heard. So, as we see here, as this new thing what is called vulnerability walk, spend 5 minutes on any Indian college WhatsApp group or Instagram thread and you will see that therapy speak has become the new social currency. Phrases like don't gaslight me, set boundaries, or working on my inner child float through conversations as casually as emojis. So the vocabulary itself is global. American TikTok creators, YouTube therapists, bite sized Instagram infographics, all of these are the pipelines through which psychology's once specialist language has slipped into everyday life. But in India, the script is being rewritten. Imported terminology gets tempered by deeply local realities. So, what might be cutting off toxic family in the West configures here into something far more complex. Low contact with my parents while still living under their roof. Self care may involve face masks and journaling, but it just as often means negotiating patriarchal expectations, managing unpaid domestic labor, or carving micro moments of autonomy inside crowded households. Dr. Madhusudan Singh Solanki, senior psychiatrist at Max Smart Super Specialty Hospital, New Delhi, explains social media has done both. It has definitely helped in breaking the taboo around mental health issues, but it has also led to overexposure to information and misinformation, trivializing sensitive mental health terms like trauma, depression, ADHD, or PTSD, and an unhealthy tendency to seek validation online, which may become a compulsive need and stops personal growth. So, this language can be liberating. It gives young people frameworks their parents never had, vocabulary to name confusion, tools to articulate relational harm, but it also risks collapsing nuance into buzzwords. So, gaslighting becomes shorthand for disagreement, OCD for being a particular, depression for a grey weekend. Names mutate into diagnoses. Symptoms are being aestheticized into content. So, in the attention economy, pain travels at light speed, but it also gathers community along the way. Platforms and wellness startups from Headspace to homegrown entrants like Koto have stepped into this new emotional marketplace, offering both professional therapy and softer on ramps to well being. Shefali Anurag, who's a co founder of Koto, which is a global 24 into 7 emotional wellness platform, connecting users with verified experts across 10 plus modalities, notes millennials and younger audiences are reshaping how mental health is expressed. So social media has become a public diary. Healing today extends beyond clinics. Journals, mood boards, skincare routines, and vision boards have become symbols of self care, while tarots, astrology, and energy rituals are increasingly popular gateways into wellness. So, on Koto, we see thousands turn to practices including candle blessings, crystal healing, sleep, and relationship healing as stigma free entry points before seeking traditional therapy. But the stylization of vulnerability comes with its own shadows. So, when heartbreak becomes a mood board, sorrow a filter, and confession a form of content creation, emotional truth can blur into performance. So, as Dr. Mona Gujral, who's a chief psychologist at Koto, cautions, today's young generation is cultivating a deeply aestheticized form of vulnerability. So, what's being called the sad girl era, or coquette depression. So it is a kind of emotional expression which is wrapped up in lace, soft colors, melancholic playlists, and wistful filters. But when depression becomes a fashion statement, there's a real danger of trivializing true suffering. So, despite this tension, the momentum is impossible to ignore. India's mental health apps market is projected to hit USD 1,409.3 million by 2030. This is growing at a compound annual rate of 18.5% from 2025 to 2030. This is a sign that emotional well being has moved from taboo to trend to mainstream lifestyle investment. So, this new emotional lexicon, borrowed, adapted, aestheticized, has become more than language. It's a mirror of a generation navigating chaos with candor, turning private turmoil into shareable currency. It's also reframing healing as well as both personal rebellion and also cultural reset. Now we move on to what is emotional economy. So when therapy becomes something to display, vulnerability turns into a performance. Online confession cultures builds community, yes, but it can also spark an unspoken contest. Who carries the heaviest heartbreak? Whose breakdown feels the rawest? Whose pain goes viral first? In this spotlight economy, identity is shaped in pixels. So, if someone builds an online persona about being the sad girl, what actually happens when she begins to feel better? Does healing risk obscurity? So, Dr. Kavita Arora, who's a child and adolescent psychiatrist offers a clear warning. Social media is valuable for initiating conversations. It's not designed to provide the forms of support that such conversations may require to take them towards resolution of the pain or the confusion. So, this gap is something we must take note of. When suffering itself becomes highlighted as content, then there's a danger that performance will take precedence, as performative content often attracts more attention. So, in such cases, validation becomes a driver rather than genuine care or support. This can be harmful for individuals seeking help. So, the digital landscape has also birthed a new anxiety, self-diagnosis by algorithm. So endless reels list the symptoms of ADHD, autism, depression, bipolar disorder, while impressionable young audiences scroll, identify, and declare, "I am bipolar, I have ADHD," often without ever speaking to a clinician. So this can spark recognition. It can just as easily mislabel. Meanwhile, behind the glow of pastel journals and softly lit healing routines, the real picture is stark. Therapy remains a luxury. In major metros, a single session can cost around 2,500 rupees, which is untenable for many working class or rural families. Then it is a stretch even for the urban middle class. So WHO estimates fewer than one mental health professional per 1 lakh people in India. A NIMHANS national survey found nearly 150 million Indians need active mental health care. Fewer than 30 million receive it. So the online therapy aesthetic inevitably reflects those who can afford both therapy and the language surrounding it. Urban English speaking upper middle class youth. Scroll through healing content and an unmistakable pattern emerges. Women dominate the landscape. Men instead slip towards humor as camouflage. So there is a meme about anxiety gains that is a kind of which I kind of gains traction precisely because it hides softness beneath irony. So, yet admins of confession pages say that their inboxes are flooded with anonymous mail submissions. Boys who are whispering into the void what they can't say to their own friends. Also, for queer and non-binary youth, the internet becomes more than a community, it becomes a sanctuary. So when home feels unsafe, stigma suffocates, then online therapy culture offers language, solidarity, and also survival. Here vulnerability isn't just an aesthetic, it is a lifeline. This gendered divide reveals both the strides that are made and the fractures are still visible. It is a world where vulnerability is polished, it is feminized, it is posted, where men speak in coded jokes, where queer youth carve out hidden rooms to breathe. We move on to what is called here as a wellness wave. Globally, therapy, TikTok, and mental health YouTube have matured into very polished, multi-million dollar ecosystems. So, overseas creators from Dr. Julie Smith in the UK to a cadre of licensed American therapists have turned psychology into prime time content. So, concepts like attachment styles, trauma bonds, achieved cultural fluency there long before they entered India's feed. So, India's movement, by contrast, is younger, it is unrulier, and is intimately shaped by its own social choreography. This hybrid vocabulary, half borrowed, half invented, is what makes the Indian mental health wave both fragile and also fiercely creative. Fragile because stigma, silence, and infrastructural gaps still close in on young people. Creative because they are crafting a lexicon that reflects their real lives, not imported realities. Social media has undeniably made mental health visible. The real question is whether visibility becomes support. For many young Indians, Instagram Reels, YouTube explainers, and Discord or WhatsApp circles are not just content, they're the first warm doorway into emotional literacy, often long before any professional enters the picture. Meenakshi Das, for example, who's a young mother from Kolkata, articulates this duality with a rare clarity of speech. So she says, if therapy suddenly becomes affordable, it is completely normal, then a lot of young people would obviously and absolutely take that option. Having a safe professional space where one can speak and talk will take some weight off their shoulders. But I don't think Instagram, YouTube, or Discord will suddenly stop being part of the picture. So, those spaces are worlds where friendships live, where they share feelings with people who understand them. Therapy might give some kind of professional guidance. Everyday conversations and peer support will still go on, and that is irreplaceable. There is nothing like having a friend to talk to, nothing like having a family member who will understand and whom you can pick up the phone and call. So, her insight gestures towards a truth that is often missed. Online spaces aren't substitutes, they are emotional ecosystems. They offer relatability, validation, and daily scaffolding. The kind of quiet support clinical rooms in hospitals or clinics aren't going to always provide. Yet, this hybrid model skews urban, privileged, and connected. Beyond these grids, care remains patchy. India is trying to close that gap. The National Mental Health Program, which was launched in 1982, laid the groundwork. But recent initiatives like the National Tele Mental Health Program, the NTMHP, and its Tele Manas cells suggests a long awaited shift towards scale and accessibility. So, universities are quietly opening counseling centers, workplaces are rolling out digital therapy apps and employee assistant programs. Yet, these remain oases like, because like in a desert, they're concentrated only in wealthier cities. They're still out of reach for many young people who need them the most. Cultural narratives add their own weight. In countless homes, emotional struggles are still read as weakness, ingratitude, lack of discipline, even poor character. So, some families interpret distress through the lens of karma or the supernatural, and while young people may freely talk online, the moment care becomes offline and real, then the old fears will creep in: gossip, judgment, whispers, shame. Lavanya Bhattacharya, who's a student from OP Jindal Global University, captures this emotional economy of posting. Honestly, for a lot of us, posting something about mental health doesn't feel like oversharing. It's how we get through the day. It's how we find people who actually understand what we're feeling, especially what our families or schools never had the language for it. Putting it online makes it feel less lonely, like you're not the only one, and in a way it feels braver to be able to admit it on Instagram than in just your own living room. So in today's India, mental health care isn't just a single path, it is a constellation, it is a therapy session, it is a TikTok confession, a government helpline, and a WhatsApp support group. It is an Instagram caption that feels like courage. It is a private struggle which is cast into a public sea. It is hoping that someone else will recognize the shape of it. The future of healing here won't be either clinical nor can it be digital. It will be both. It is intertwined, it is improvisational, it is distinctly Indian. It is our very own Bharat. The real question is whether this emotional fluency can leap from screens into clinics, into classrooms and workplaces, then that is where change will come. Change will hinge on policy, affordability, and systemic inclusion. Until then, reels, confession posts, all of that are just going to function as both lifelines and mirrors. It's going to reflect courage, creativity, and also the contradictions of a generation which is lighting up India's mental health narrative in real time.